Hello, and welcome to the video tour of Ashanté Kindle and Khari Turner's exhibit, Copper Planted Seeds, which took place at Finlandia University Gallery from July 29th through October 5th in 2021. First, I'll take you on a brief video overview of the gallery installation of Copper Planted Seeds, followed by images of the individual works by Khari and Ashanté, with their titles and media. Finally, there is a recording of their gallery talk which took place at the reception on September 30th, 2021. Thank you for viewing our video tour of the Copper Planted Seeds exhibit at Finlandia University Gallery. Black Alternative 2 by Khari Turner. Acrylic, oil, ink, charcoal, sand, and water from the Pacific Ocean, the Lower Manhattan Docks, the Milwaukee River, and Lake Michigan. Planted Piece by Khari Turner. Acrylic, oil, ink, charcoal, sand, and water from the coast of Senegal, the Lower Manhattan Docks, the Milwaukee River, Lake Michigan, and the Pacific Ocean. Between Copper and a Hard Place by Khari Turner. Acrylic, oil, ink, charcoal, sand, and water from the coast of Senegal, the Lower Manhattan Docks, the Milwaukee River, Lake Michigan, and the Pacific Ocean. A Moment to Rest by Khari Turner. Acrylic, oil, ink, charcoal, sand, and water from the coast of Senegal, the Lower Manhattan Docks, the Milwaukee River, Lake Michigan, and the Pacific Ocean. New Growth, number 1 through 9 by Ashanté Kindle. Acrylic on canvas. New Growth, number 1 by Ashanté Kindle. Acrylic on canvas. New Growth, number 7 by Ashanté Kindle. Acrylic on canvas. Untitled Crown, number 17. Acrylic on canvas by Ashanté Kindle. The Center of a Tree's Blossom by Ashanté Kindle, acrylic on canvas. Infinitely Flowing in the Truth of My Existence, acrylic on canvas by Ashanté Kindle. It's my honor to welcome Ashanté Kindle and Khari Turner. I've been looking forward to this exhibit since we arranged it 8 months ago or something.
Yeah.
So it was a while ago. They've been on campus since Tuesday. They met with our trio students. They met with our Great Books class and the Business Side of Art class. We had them over at Michigan Tech where they gave a talk. And now our last event is here. So Ashanté is an MFA candidate at the University of Connecticut. She got her BFA at Austin Peay State University in Clarksville, Tennessee. She's been in numerous exhibits in the United States, including New York, Tennessee, Washington, and Florida. Her work has been featured in Hyperallergic and the Boston Rail, which are online culture-based magazines in New York. Khari Turner just finished his MFA at Columbia University in New York City. Congratulations. He also got his BFA at Austin Peay State University in Tennessee. He's had solo shows in California and in New York, and his work was recently featured in the Christie's Say It Loud, I'm Black and Proud exhibit. His work has also been featured in Art News, White Hot Magazine, Hyperallergic, and Juxtapose Radio. So, welcome to you both. Who's going
Thank you everybody for coming. I'm gonna give my standard issued greeting and introduction. And so basically, I'm just going to talk about the name of the show. So it's called Copper Planet Seeds, which means a lot to me and Ashanté. And the way that we both work, as a couple, we pretty much think of all our titles kind of in sync and think about, what are we going to give this community? Especially because all of the work, except for maybe these two larger pieces, were all done specifically for this area and for this show. And so in thinking about that, we talked to Carrie and we were like, well, what's something about this, about this neighborhood, about this town, about this place, about the school? And she gave us so many different things and talked about the school motto and basically the school's influence, as well as all of the mining that happened in this place and the migration of Finnish people and all these other different people to work in the mines and be here. And so essentially, me and Ashanté work a lot in the ideas about history and how does history affect the present. And so one thing that we talked about is kind of the history of people who migrated after slavery. And so what they would do is that people would braid seeds into their hair. And so when they went to a new spot and found a place that they wanted to settle, they could plant those seeds and grow food and whatever else they need in that area so they can survive there. So essentially what we imagined is, what if those people planted copper in their hair? What if they came to a place like this? What if they sat down, settled down, and created space using copper to make, themselves alive here? And so that's what we thought of, and that's how this show was named. And thinking about how everyone here now is kind of a representation of the history of this place and the mines and all these people that migrated to this area, getting somewhere, starting their own families, doing their own things, and living their own lives. And that's what it is. That's what Copper Planet Seeds is focused on. It's like this idea of taking all these different things and starting a new life. And so with that, we're gonna just talk a little. I'm gonna hand it over to Ashanté. She'll talk a little bit about her work. I'll hand it over to me. I'll talk a little bit about my work, and then we'll kind of just open it up. If anybody wants to have questions or anybody wants to say anything, as well as jump in. If we're in the middle of saying something, and you're like, actually, hold on, stop us. But if anybody doesn't have any questions right now, I'm gonna hand it over to Ashanté, and then we'll keep on.
Awesome. So I guess I'll just talk a little bit about the background of my work and what influences my work. So for my work, my desire is to really make work that in celebration of the history and beauty of blackness. And then I think about that in relationship to my identity. And what is something that I feel is an ultimate representation of my identity, and it's always been my hair. And it's starting from me growing up and doing other people's hair was a way for me to support myself through high school. And then having an aunt who owned a salon. My uncle's a master barber. And just thinking going through the years and thinking about hair as this form of expression, and then also thinking about hair as how it connects us, whether it's literally through DNA, but then also it's a literal form of expression. And so that's what usually inspires the work that I make. And I'm really obsessed basically with the style of finger waves. And I really think it's been me holding on to a childhood memory. My mom always had finger waves in her hair, and I don't know why I specifically can remember seeing my mom do these styles in her hair, whether it was her doing it or her leaving my aunt's salon with this hairstyle. And so through my obsession with these waves, I've just kept on doing them, and they sort of become a visual language for me. And as I continue to make work and thinking about my identity and who I am, and I've gone from only thinking about my identity being black, but now I'm thinking about blackness as a place. And so a lot of these works have now turned into me thinking about map making, and especially the copper one right over there. It sort of starts to feel these mountain ranges or flowing rivers, and so it starts to think about the macro versus micro. But I always refer to these paintings as crowns. So then you think about the crown of someone's head, and then like now thinking about that in relationship to like a bird's eye view, and like how much like we could hold in our hair, and thinking about hair as like a history keeper, and even like the simple idea of like people cutting their hair, and many of the reasons why especially women cut their hair. I know for me, cutting my hair was usually like me wanting to like rid myself of something. But like it's like this literal thing, like your hair being like a witness to a lot of things. So those are just like some of like the things that I think about when I'm like thinking about hair and like how it comes into my work. But I'm gonna pause there and pass it back to Khari.
Oh, that was nice. Give it up for Ashanté. That's so cute. Well, there's so much to say. There's so much to say. Again, thank you all for coming. We really appreciate being able to talk about our work. As far as my work goes, it's a lot of different things that I put into it. But the biggest thing is the feeling and the emotion that you have when you walk up to the piece. So if you've read the titles and you've read the cards, you realize that there's water listed in the word. And that water comes from the coast of Senegal, the lower Manhattan docks, Lake Michigan, Milwaukee River. I'm born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And then the Pacific Ocean off the coast of California. And the reason those are listed is because all of that water is used in all of this work. If you can kind of see how these things flow and all these different marks, like I can't paint any of that. So what happens is, as I mix ocean water with ink, and then play it, and then put it directly on my canvases. And the reason I do that is thinking about water as a container of history. Water, the same water that's on this earth has been the same water that's always been on this earth. So essentially, there's thousands upon thousands of years of history in that water. Regardless of whatever I do with it, it already has its own identity, it has its own DNA, it has all these different properties that come from being on this same planet and going through the same things that we've all gone through in one way or another. And so essentially, that all gets put onto this, and then these pieces kind of come alive because of that. So I insert DNA into the work, create these bodies of water, and the reason I do that is because I also want people to connect to this work on multiple different planes and existences. Like everybody here is made up mostly of water, more water than anything else. So essentially we all connect through water more than we would be different than each other in any other way. So if that's true, then all of these works connect to you in the same way. They're all about the same size as a body. They're all about the same size as a regular team. And essentially, like when you go up to the work, it's supposed to kind of feel like it's body to body. And that's the whole point of the work, is thinking about this way that I address my identity, my history, my blackness, but also my Africanness, and how the ocean is so important to the way that I translate what's going on here and how I live here now, and addressing also the past and history of how I got here and what it means to be here, but put it in a way that I really enjoy the images. They're very joyful. There's contemplation, there's human emotion, but never any sorrow or pain. And so essentially, all of this was put into the work and thinking about these different ways of being a body of water amongst other bodies of water, using bodies of water to create themselves. So thank you.